All right, welcome back to the podcast. Going to do a solo episode today about calling deer. I've been hunting for about 12 years, which isn't a long time. I've been hunting since 2013, and I get probably 25 to 30 days per year. So I've been able to figure out some things that have worked for me, but also just listening to a lot of the locals and seeing what they recommend or hearing what they recommend, going out with them, kind of observing sometimes what they say is slightly different than what they do, or there's something that they say is the key, but it might end up being something else. So definitely not an expert, but there's some things that have ended up working for me. Before we get to like the actual tactics, so I think there's a couple of things that really matter a ton. And number one is like population. The carrying capacity of quality habitat in Southeast Alaska is about 20 to 25 deer per square mile. If it's second growth and it's not great habitat, then it's about half of that. So if you are in a population dense area, then it might be a lot more about just not missing up opportunities than it is necessarily the call. So we'll get to the pressure in a second too, but if you get to an area that's a little bit further from town, or you're taking a skiff ride, or, even a fly out or something like that, you're getting to an area that has a lot of population. And so hunting well is the most important thing. Go to population rich areas and you're going to have a better opportunity for success. That's just kind of an obvious type thing. I think it kind of gets overlooked a little bit. If you're hunting an area and you're trying a couple tactics and someone else is getting a whole bunch of bucks, well, it might be the population more than it's anything wrong than what you're doing. And that's something that I've kind of learned. I'm hunting an area or hunting areas that might have a little bit more pressure. The population might not be as good. And so it's not a matter of there being like one buck per muskeg. There might be fewer bucks. And so as a result, I can't get too frustrated because I'm not hunting a population dense area that doesn't get any traffic. So all these kind of play together. So population is the first key. The second key obviously is pressure. Some muskegs that are close to town just get hammered. And so it can look like amazing habitat, and you take pictures of it and it looks super juicy and it looks indistinguishable from where, you saw a YouTube video of someone calling in 2 or 3 bucks, or someone was on Facebook and the muskeg looked exactly the same and they were rubs and there was this and that. But with the amount of pressure, it's going to impact how the deer act. And so population plus pressure, and all of a sudden you're really frustrated because, again, you think it's the call, or I didn't wait long enough, or I wasn't calling right or using the right type of call. But maybe it was an indication of population. Maybe there was too much pressure. Those things can definitely happen. In a couple high pressure areas, I've been posted up and I've heard people just wailing on calls, and I've seen bucks sprinting in the other direction and does sprinting in the other direction, which is pretty. I don't know what happened. Maybe they came to the call and were spooked by the guy who was calling, or maybe they just, at the sound of that, they are so used to that sound and it's kind of overridden their natural instinct to respond to the call. So if you have a doe coming to the call to the rescue, or for whatever reason goes in there and the buck follows because the buck is following where the doe goes, or the buck thinks that, oh, this is where a doe is going to be, and so I'm going to go to that area. That is the natural instinct. But in areas with a lot of pressure, maybe that kind of gets overridden because the ones that do end up coming get shot. The ones that are a little bit more tentative either don't fully commit and don't fully come in, or they have learned that when I go into that sound, it ends up being a person this time of year. So once we talk population, then we talk pressure. Now we get into the actual calling of it. So I have a couple different calls. I like my drop shot call, because when I'm approaching these edges and I'm approaching these muskegs, I like to stop well before it. So kind of in the timber, rather than like march into the muskeg and start blowing the call. I like to just approach, and I'm just trying to get something up out of the bed or to turn its head. So I don't go with a huge wail yet. Sometimes I'll just go with like a little. And the nice thing about the drop shot call is that it's a really well-made call out of music grade wood. So you can just essentially breathe into it and you're going to get a nice clean sound. So it's not a wail, it's not a distress call, it's just something, it sounds like a deer making a noise. A lot of times you hear people call, you watch videos of people calling, and you think, okay, I've seen a ton of deer, but I've never heard a deer make any sound anywhere remote to that. And so the low, subtle one I like is I'm approaching just to see if something is going to stand up or if it's going to move, rather than like charge into the muskeg right on the edge and call, hoping to call something in from a long way away. I'm just looking as my approach is happening. If there's anything within a 20 to 30 yard radius that can hear this, that might stand up, that might come into it before I get to the muskeg where I'm going to call a little bit louder. There's also, I have another call here. I don't want to talk trash about calls because they all work, but I like the drop shot call more than this one. I know a lot of people who have this call and they like it, just a little different and a little bit different in the tone, and then also that low tone that I like, or that breathe, being able to just breathe and make a nice clean sound isn't as clear with this one. You're gonna have to trust that I'm doing the same airflow here. I was gonna do a video, but then I decided I just didn't feel like it. So here are the two calls. Here's the drop shot and then the other one. See, that second one is a little bit lower. It feels like I have less air support behind it, but that was the same amount of air, just kind of like a little bit more than a breath. Different tone. As we go a little bit higher, you'll see the difference in the tones too. The second one is a little bit higher. So I like the sound is nice and clean for both of those, which is why the second one is something that people really like. They like that pitch, and I think if you are comfortable with it, or whatever you hunt well, is the most important thing. If you don't have confidence in your call, then you might not wait, or you might not be paying attention because you're just pissed off because you don't think it sounds right. And so you're not focused on making the call, assuming something's going to come in the woods. You're approaching a muskeg. You've seen rubs. Okay, there's going to be a buck here. So I'm expecting the buck. So I'm looking around. I'm looking for antlers. I'm not looking for something running in. I'm paying attention to something that is coming in. And so whether or not whatever call you have, having confidence in is pretty important, whatever you prefer as far as tone goes. There's also this third call that I have that buddy Ryan made. It's just part of a deer antler that he drilled a hole in and put the little mechanism for a squeaker toy. So he glued that in there. So it's super cheap. I don't know, it probably cost him, I think he got a pack of those. Actually, I can kind of look it up here. I'll look it up in a second here. Here's the noise. And he will wail on that thing. So all three of these you can wail on and really try to bring something in or be really aggressive and get something curious. So even if something is close, when I get to the side of a muskeg, or I'm in that transition area and nothing's happening, I'm kind of looking around. I've used my binoculars to glass, then I'll wail on it and then I'll wait. And waiting can be a tough thing too, because some people say you got to wait a minimum 45 minutes from when you call. And I've been on both sides of that. I've had something come in immediately. I've been waiting, you call a little bit, do a sequence, and then kind of call every little bit to keep something coming in. And then as soon as I stop and have lunch, and then as I'm walking away, something had come mostly in or was in the process of coming in. So I've had some nice bucks that just didn't really come all the way. And it wasn't until I started kind of hiking along the edge that I ended up bumping it. And then, of course, you never know. Like maybe it was kind of responding to the call, and then because it thinks that I left, maybe that's what, who knows? Like you don't know for absolutely sure how the buck was or was not responding to it. But again, it kind of comes down to that confidence thing. So hold on. I was going to try to look this up. The squeaker toy noise maker, how much those things cost. Yeah, it's a pack of like $6. The squeaker toy. What is this? There's a lot of random stuff in here, but it's pretty inexpensive. You can get these the squeakers, for like $10 for a pack of a bunch of them. So you can just drill a hole in an old antler or a piece of wood or something like that, and then you can put in your own. So they're like super cheap. 100-piece white toy noise makers, insert squeakers, plastic dogs, squeaker whistles, toy insert replacements, DIY accessories. $8 for 100 of them. So yeah, you can make those pretty cheap yourself if you want to. Give them to a friend. So yeah, there you go. Okay, where was we? See, then I looked up the stinking thing and now I'm all off track here. Oh, so yeah, calling. If you wait for 45 minutes, then you're going to travel along fewer muskegs. And I think one of the things, I definitely don't consider myself like a wilderness athlete, but one of the things that is to my benefit is that I don't mind walking multiple miles. There are people who are successful hunters who are very, very patient. And so they'll do a 1 mile circuit in the entire day. And they will call and they will listen and they will be meticulous and they will pick apart 1 or 2 muskegs that they do. I kind of see a chain of muskegs and I want to hunt as many muskegs as possible, especially keying in on those transition areas between the muskegs. And so if I were to wait for 45 minutes to an hour at each muskeg, or not be willing to hike 2 miles to get to some muskegs or hike a mile to get to a muskeg, I'm not going to cover enough ground. So 2 weeks ago, I was at a muskeg and I called, and after I usually get about 15 to 20 minutes. So I'll call, I'll look around, and then I'll walk very, very slow. I definitely try to avoid walking down the middle of a muskeg, but sometimes the edge is so loud with salal that you're just going to be blowing stuff out. So as slow and quiet as I can along the edge of the muskeg. So I called, waited for about 10, 15 minutes, and then I started walking slowly around the edge of the muskeg. There was a little knob in the middle that had some little cedars, and I got around to the other side of the knob and there was a buck that was staring at me because it caught my motion. I was behind a tree. And so it was just a staring contest. I didn't have a shot. So I got my phone, took a picture of it, and I knew it was going to move off to its right, my left, and I was going to have a shot. So I kind of got ready, but then as it went to the right, it kind of dove behind a little bit more brush that I didn't really see. And I thought I'd be able to stop it. As soon as it started walking, I just gave a little bit on my call, and it hesitated for a second, but it was behind the brush and then took off. So I ended up not getting it. So of course, in my recapping of the hunt, I thought, okay, had I stayed on the edge of the muskeg and not started walking around it and waited more like 30 minutes rather than 10 or 15 minutes, maybe that buck would have come up and over that knob. I would have seen it. I would have had a shot. But if I would apply that logic through everything, like I was at 1,600 feet of elevation and I had been walking through a whole bunch of different muskegs. So if I had stopped at each little muskeg and waited 45 minutes each time I called, I wouldn't have even gotten to this spot to have the encounter. So it's kind of you run the program that you're comfortable with, you call in a way that you're comfortable with, you run your program, and that means that there's going to be a trade-off. You either cover more ground and potentially have more encounters, because if you have 20 to 25 deer per square mile or less than that, getting into multiple potential buck habitats, and there is consolidation this time of year around does. So if you cover more area, then in theory you're going to be in more buck area. If you don't cover more ground, you're going to hunt those areas potentially better. So it's definitely a trade-off. There will be people who say that, yeah, the reason why you didn't get that buck is because you weren't patient enough, and maybe that's true. But again, if I had applied that, then I wouldn't have even gotten to that spot and had that encounter, which of course meant that maybe if I would have been more patient at one of the other muskegs, something else would have come in earlier. So I think getting further away into a spot that was likely less pressured increased my chances, and that's kind of what I'm looking to do. I want the increased chance of something coming in, and so I'm willing to walk a little bit further. I have a difficult time staying all day at one spot. So kind of using what you like to your advantage, paying attention to what other people do, but also just adopting your system that you're comfortable with, whatever call that you like, whatever sequences that you like, and then not comparing yourself maybe to other people. Maybe take what they say, what they do into consideration and apply it to your area. Again, there might be people who are very, very successful, and that just could be they're living in a very rich environment and there's a ton of deer around. So it's not that you don't call correctly. It could be that that buck was going to respond to anything. So whether or not you used a bleat or a grunt or whatever, that thing was going to respond in some way. Maybe it walked in rather than ran in. Maybe it just stood up, but it was going to respond because it was in the area. There wasn't pressure. It was able to act normally. So all those things play in. So before you look at the Facebook Blacktail group and get all sad and depressed because you didn't get one, think about population density, think about pressure, and think about how you called and what might you adjust to your program to maybe make it a little bit better. But, feeling confident is a super important thing. If we take that analogy to fishing, There are people who fish certain depths with certain flashers, and they swear by a cut plug or a trolling spoon or, so many different things. So it's just your preference. It's your fly selection when steelhead fishing. It's all the same thing. Whatever you fish well, whatever you're confident with, whatever you pay attention to when you're doing, that applies to hunting as well. So quick little episode there, getting down to the end of the season. I don't know if things are going to be really, really coming to the call. I got one 2 days ago that seemed to call to or come to the soft calling that I was doing. I was still in the timber. I wasn't even in the transition. I just kind of had a high point, and I just wanted to sit for a second and have a little snack. And I called a little bit, and it came from the right, and it was that second growth with super mossy. So it just happened to step on a stick, and I thought it was a squirrel, but I looked to the right, and man, from behind this little bit of brush, I just that shape of the face, the white patch, and then some antlers. And I thought, oh man, it's right there. And then it ended up going to the side a little bit, made a good shot, and dropped it. So that was super cool. But it certainly was not running into the call. I think with the soft calling, you get more of like a curious walking in to investigate, not the running in that you might get. At the same time, Ryan was out there, and he has a very similar call to the one that he gave me, and he was just wailing on that thing. He called in 4 does. So, who knows what happens, but there's still some time in the season left. So hopefully you're getting out there, and appreciate you listening. In order to play the game, if you do like the podcast, really appreciate liking, subscribing, writing reviews and whatnot. Really helps with the algorithm, because that's just kind of how things work. But appreciate your time, and talk to you next time.